Here we are for another Around the Table. This is Walter Fields, North Star News Executive Editor.
And hello, everybody. I'm Robert Tarver. I'm the attorney for North Star News.
So before we get into our conversation, let's go to the other side of the universe and hear what right-wing conservatives are talking about. This is from day 2 of the CPAC conference, courtesy of the Lincoln Project. Just take a listen.
My name is Ted Cruz, and my pronouns are kiss my ass.
My pronouns are Reagan and Trump.
My pronouns are let's go Brandon.
Ladies and gentlemen, our people, our American citizens have dreams too. And one of those dreams is that they should be able to have a family cookout with hamburger buns.
Up next, faith over fascism.
The militant left in America are the modern-day version of book burners.
Do the wackos believe in science? Why, no, of course they don't.
There's no such thing as misinformation.
You want to comment on kind of the canceling of doctors?
Socialist cheat.
They stole the 2020 election. They had tasseled loafers on.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe did this.
Joe Biden is not a nice man.
Joe Biden is a senile old pervert who's pulling on par with monkeypox.
Ay caramba.
When I said that I'm a Christian nationalist, I have nothing to be ashamed of because that's what most Americans are.
We'll all be given a free hobo to defecate in our front yard.
Who's going to tell Kamala?
Will Elizabeth Warren go on the warpath?
We're having the trial of the machines. Nice name, right?
There's nothing worse than when you start to develop feelings for someone or you're on a date and you realize they're a Democrat.
Lock her up! Lock her up!
That has a nice ring to it.
So, of course, they have to end with one of their black and brown lackeys. But, this is just the other side of stupid. I mean, it really is. And you think about the history of conservatives in America, that it was a very serious movement that was really focused on limited government, individual freedoms. And this is what Donald Trump has dissolved the Republican Party into a group of babbling idiots.
But you know
talking
what?
about nothing.
It was always focused on, as you said, that was the purest form of conservatism.
Yes.
But there was always the underbelly. And
Yes.
the underbelly, they were so successful for so many years at hiding that underbelly. Reagan hit it, Bush hit it, all of them hit it, but all of a sudden the crazies have now taken over the asylum. And now we see exactly what they were all about all along. It's okay for them to be racist when they didn't talk about racism, but now they're just openly and unashamedly racist and crazy. It makes absolutely no sense.
And we have to be clear that they're the progeny of conservative Democrats. So in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, the Dixiecrats were what we're seeing now in white Republican conservatives, just abjectly racist, right? And loony. Because when you go back and you look and you read some of the things that some Southern Democrats were saying about Black people in the 50s and 60s, is just as insane. Exactly. Right? And you would hope that at some point Americans would become exhausted by this, because when you think of the energy that it has sapped from this country, racism alone, and what it's done to the productivity of our nation and the opportunities of our nation, it really has drained our nation's soul. But this conference sort of frames where we are right now in this country. And so this past week, we saw a verdict in the case of right-wing conspirator Alex Jones, who for years were spinning lies about the tragic shooting and killing of children in the Sandy Hook incident. And a jury has now held him responsible, first with $4 million in compensatory damages, and then coming back with punitive damages that are, I believe, are around $45 million. $45 million. And people should know that's not really out of line, because oftentimes it's treble the compensatory damages. But what's important about this case is that Alex Jones had to admit under oath in open court that everything that he had been saying was a lie. And I find that to be just incredible when you think about the pain and suffering, and that's the punitive damage part of this, that these families have had to endure when you have someone going around the country saying that, oh, these kids weren't really killed. These were crisis actors we were seeing. You know, it's just incredible, the inhumanity of these people, like Alex Jones. And this isn't the last trial. He is facing several other trials complaints brought by parents. But it was sort of a reflective moment in America that we've come to this, where you can lie about the death of children. And let's be clear, to make money. Alex Jones was making money off of his right-wing social media sites.
Apparently, in depositions, they found that he had made more than $200 million over the years on this kind of stuff. You know, what's really noteworthy about this particular case is, number one, it's a Texas case, and this is a Texas jury. So he really was at a place where he should have had home field advantage. And it shows you that perhaps people are not as crazy as people think they are in Texas. And if there's even a limit to how far they'll go. You were talking about punitive damages. Punitive damages, as you said, they're meant to punish. That's what they're for. So that you punish the egregious behavior. A sum like that, 45 million, means that you really found that he was out of line here. And think about it. He was profiting off of the deaths of human beings, of children. And so I just think that realistically, this may signal a whole different turn in how you handle individuals like an Alex Jones, perhaps even like a Sean Hannity or a Tucker Carlson. They're already facing their own individual suits. But the fact of the matter is, you know, you can hold these people responsible for these types of things. But I want to go back to the CPAC thing, because I don't know if you ever remember SpongeBob, the show SpongeBob. They used to have this thing called Opposite Day, where like when you say one thing and it really means something else. How are you going to say that, you know, the Democrats are engaged in book burning when, or they're equivalent book burners, when you see in Florida, in Idaho, in all these states, it is the Republicans who have tried to remove books from the shelves, who have tried to ban books in certain places. I haven't seen a single Democrat doing it, and they know that. So to just stand up there and say that and have people buy into the lie, it's just a sham. The other thing, you know, they don't believe in science. Oh my God, what are you talking about? You are the scientific deniers. You deny climate change, you deny all these things. And so it's almost like looking at something that is surreal, because it doesn't make any sense.
And it's the equivalent to me, like I'm a big Superman fan. So Bizarro World and Superman, where everything was opposite, right? And so we're watching Bizarro America right now, where everything that these people claim is contrary to the actual truth. And here's where the lack of education, the lack of enlightenment comes into play. Because it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to have people actually believe it. You know, just 10 years ago, if some of these things were said, people would have been, yeah, out of your mind. But because, and here's one of the downfalls of social media, because social media has made misinformation so readily available and so available 24/7, you have people who have been saturated with misinformation who now believe that it is indeed fact. And I'm glad you referenced Texas when we're talking about this verdict, because what people also need to understand, Texas was one of the most hostile states to the right to sue. Yep. For decades, there had been an effort in Texas to curtail these lawsuits, right? These personal injury lawsuits. Right. And so for a Texas jury, with all that backdrop in history, to come back with that verdict is a powerful statement. And as you said, Alex Jones is not the only one. We even have institutions now who are facing defamation lawsuits, like the Fox News Channel and One America News, but from Dominion, you know, the voting machine company, because basically lies were spread about this company's product. So we might be entering into a period where, if we can't hold people accountable or institutions accountable. Juries certainly can hold institutions and people accountable if we can get some of these cases in the right court venue to be able to have these issues addressed. And speaking of court, you know, we got to go down to Georgia because our favorite prosecutor in America, Fannie Willis, is just doing her thing down there and lining up folks in a way that it is increasingly making it harder for Merrick Garland and the U.S. Department of Justice to ignore a possible criminal indictment of Donald Trump. And the more we, you know, move into this area in the weeks and months to come, I think people should really pay close attention to Georgia.
Yeah.
I think this prosecutor is onto something. The other side knows it. The fact that she's keying in on what I consider to be the meat of the conspiracy, the use of these false electors, and the pressure applied to Georgia election officials to try to change the results in Georgia, to me signal that she may be the first law officer who holds Donald Trump accountable.
Yeah, there are two factors here with regard to the Georgia investigation. Number one, the Republicans believe that they can run out the clock on the January 6th commission. They believe that they're in good standing to take over the House and they can quash the January 6th investigation. But they can't quash this thing with Fannie Willis. They can't quash the Texas thing legitimately. And so what they now have done is they have filed or attempted to file a recall petition against her. And the recall petition, you know, it basically is saying that she is, you know, not doing
her job.
Yeah, it makes no sense. First and foremost, it's never going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is in order to get a recall petition in Georgia, you have to show that it's either misconduct, malfeasance, or something like that. And they don't have any of that. The second thing is you need at least 30% of the registered voters to sign a petition. That would be 240 or 204,000 people that would have to sign a petition. Now, just for information's sake, 147,000 people were Trump voters in the last election. So you'd have to get all the Trump voters and then find another approximately either 60 or 100,000 people on top. But they've already admitted, they said, this is not a legal function. Realistically, this is all about trying to politicize this thing so that, number one, if there is a jury pool, they'll be able to basically put out there that it's political and have individuals who may be in the pool thinking that this is all politics. And number two, to try to slow things down a little bit. But I don't see it working. I don't see how it could possibly work. And they know that it's really not going to work. There is another angle to that, though. There are two people who were involved in this. The one guy's name is David Schaefer, and the other is Brad Carver. And they are the two people. The first guy is the GOP head. And they're the two people who are spearheading this whole thing. But they are also two members of that gang of 16, the 16 fake electors. And so they have a political vested interest as well as a legal criminal vested interest in doing this. And they walk a very thin line, Walter, because the fact of the matter is, at some point, their efforts could be seen as obstructing the administration of government if it's not legitimate. If you could show that this whole thing is not legitimate, and which I think I just did in 15 seconds, then what are you doing? You're really just trying to obstruct. So there's a lot of fireworks coming in.
And I don't know what the Georgia statute says about frivolous lawsuits, but clearly this is frivolous. And, you know, but here's the political irony. In pursuing this recall, they may actually mobilize Democratic voters in a state where Stacey Abrams and Senator Ralph Warnock are on the ballot, right? So you have this contested election, and you have two Democrats who quite honestly could be elected. And this provides motivation for Democratic voters because now it's clear that the other side is not only politicizing what is clearly a legal matter, but they are attempting to do so, and the people who are spearheading it are part of the broader conspiracy that this prosecutor is investigating.
Right.
So, sometimes you can be a little too slick for yourself. And I think that this effort is, but let's stay down south because you brought something to my attention that honestly I had not been aware of, and that's the RAP Act.
Yeah, the RAP Act is a bill that's sponsored by Congressman Hank Johnson of Georgia. What has been happening across the country, and I've been a part of this because I've defended these types of cases. What's been happening is that prosecutors have used rap lyrics that people have on their Instagram or on their Facebook, where people are posting these songs against people who are charged with crimes. So that if you've been charged, for example, in a robbery, well, you may have posted some song that talks about robbery, and they would use that and actually play that in front of a jury as evidence that you are intending or have been a part of a robbery. And it's a very difficult situation because, quite frankly, it depends upon your right to just be able to have free speech and free expression of putting those things on your site. Just because you put a song on about gangster participation, about shooting, about robbing, about looting, doesn't mean that you're necessarily engaged in that. And that's a big problem because we do have a sector of our music culture that is gangster rap, gangster involved. And just because people listen to it, just because people are exposed to it, doesn't mean that they're in it. And it's a big prejudicial issue. And it's prejudicial because, quite frankly, the outside audience does not necessarily understand. They believe that because someone just happens to post that type of thing, that they may be involved. And that's the danger.
And, this goes back decades, because if you remember, when NWA hit the spotlight out in the West Coast,
That's right.
Law enforcement attempted to politicize the lyrics to say, hey, we need more stringent laws to control these gangs, and code, gang was code for young Black men. And it allowed them to militarize the Los Angeles Police Department because of the lyrics that were being used in NWA songs. Now, look, you can disagree with the sort of philosophical angle of using certain lyrics in songs, but that has always been the case. In the 1960s, groups like the Rolling Stones were considered to be, dangerous for young people. Elvis Presley was considered to be a danger to the soul of teenagers in America. So there's always been this thing about music that has sort of been beyond the status quo mainstream that people have said endangers the social order. The danger here, of course, is that with this genre, which, by the way, is embraced by most young people, Black, white, brown, you name it, right? But the narrative has been that it is the music of Black and brown rebellion.
Yeah.
And that this isn't just about lyrics. This is about the intentions of this generation towards the social order. And so
it's not only about this music, because I'm going to tell you, there's a case that I had recently where the prosecutor attempted to use simple, what I would call colloquial Black language against my client. My client was saying something to someone on the phone like, "Let me holla at you." And they said, well, that's drug language, meaning that we want to meet up for a drug transaction. So, well, wait a minute. That has nothing to do with nothing. So we went in front of a judge, and one of the things I did is I downloaded all of the Dave Chappelle clips with the gentleman who does "Let Me Holla at You," and we did all that. And I said, look, I might say "Let me holla at you" at any given day, but it's a fundamental misunderstanding of our culture and the cultural involvement, more importantly, of our young people. And now what they've attempted to do is they have attempted to criminalize Black language and Black music. And that's a very dangerous thing.
Well, and that's why I'm wearing my T-shirt, "What About Our Kids," right? Because you and I were part of an on-air discussion during our days with MSNBC around Ebonics.
Yes,
I
remember that one. It didn't go too well.
No, it didn't. But again, Black vernacular is seen as dangerous, right? Because if white people don't understand it, then it poses a danger. It's a threat. And so you have these lyrics. And look, I will be the first to admit that 80% of today's rap music, I immediately turn off because I don't find it appealing. To me, it's just noise. To me, it doesn't even have any lyrical beauty as the early rap artists did. So I don't listen to this stuff for the most part, but I also know that these are artists. And if you're going to take their words and suggest that that is reality for that artist, then you're a fool, right? Because you can look at any rap video and you see these guys in these mansions and they got all of these cars and they don't own any of that. This is all an art form. You know, the fact of the matter is that most of these cats who, you know, have this sort of thuggish gangster appearance, you know, they're suburban kids.
Hey, I remember the pictures of Tupac in glitter dancing or something like, you know.
Well, that was Dr. Dre.
It was
Dr. Dre.
Dr. You know, Dre. Come on.
Right.
You know,
and
Drake
so,
on the what is it? You know, Disney. It's come on. They're not living that life. They are absolutely not living it.
You know, Ice-T, you know, born in suburban Summit, New Jersey, right? And look, these dudes, Ice-T, Ice Cube, they were the hardest of the hard back in the 80s. Now look at them. You got Ice Cube doing family pictures, right? You got Ice-T portraying a detective on a cop show, right? Yeah. And so clearly this is an art form. And some of what is being spoken truly is the narrative of Black reality. So when NWA said, fuck the police, well, guess what? A lot of Black folks felt that way because of the oppression in the community and police brutality against Black and brown people. But the notion that you are going to use the lyrics and use them to litigate against someone, to try to, you know, convict and jail someone is just absurd.
Now, to be fair and to be reasonable, I did have a case where a gentleman had made a significant robbery, decided he was going to post the proceeds of the robbery, which is a lot of money, as well as a gun, with the backdrop of a rap song that was concerned with that. And the Rap Act does make an exception for that. If you can tie that specifically to that crime, then you can use it. And that's what's reasonable. That makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. Because that brother was just stupid. Like, let's be clear. That had nothing to do with even the lyrics. That brother was just stupid, right? You're going to go and post the criminal act that you just committed on a social media platform.
It happens
right?
more often than you want to believe.
Look, man, some of the stuff I see posted on social media, I just shake my head. Between that and some of the stuff I see, you know, on television, on these so-called like reality shows or these so-called judge shows, right? Where, and this is where we have a problem, because the law has been so demeaned by how it's been trivialized on television, right? Through these judge shows. And I will be the first one to say that we have some serious flaws in our judicial system. No doubt about it. And we have some very serious flaws, particularly on the criminal side of our judicial system. But when you start making justice entertainment, then you begin to erode public confidence that the real justice system can ever work.
But that goes for everything, doesn't it? I mean, when you really think about it, look, politics is entertainment now, justice is entertainment. And the fact of the matter is people have now become actors and not real participants, not even seeking to do justice, but to play a role of some sort in courtroom matters, not even seeking to do justice in politics, but to play this role. And part of it's really interesting because just to take it full circle, and what we saw in the CPAC video, we showed in the very beginning, you know, my pronouns are, as he said, kiss my, what, come on. Would we have seen that 15 years ago? What happened to decorum? What happened to civility? And is that the message that you want to send to your children and your children's children? Obviously so. That's what they want America to be. They want America to be brutish. They want America to be animalistic, and they're moving toward that in a hurry.
You know, it's funny you should mention what we just saw, because I just recently learned, and I never knew it, but I was trying to figure out why this person was the way he was. So Senator Alan Simpson, who used to be a senator from Wyoming, I had a chance to meet the senator when we were both on MSNBC. He came on as a guest, and we had a long conversation. He was a Republican, and I was just really struck by his compassion as a Republican. Well, I just recently found out that he was a juvenile offender. He had actually served time as a juvenile. And so he was a strong proponent of giving juveniles a second chance and saying that the system shouldn't be as punitive as it is. And it's even more punitive now than what we had in talking about in our conversation from 30 years ago in the 1990s. So I think you're right. Reality has been skewed in America. Even entertainment is not entertainment. And I do want to end on this note, because there is just this exceptional Black produced comedy called Abbott Elementary that comes on the ABC network, and it is about a fictional elementary school. The series is written by Quinta Brunson, who is a Black woman comedian, brilliant Black cast, including Shirley Ralph. But in a very comedic way, this show cuts to the heart of so many of the challenges we have in public education. And both you and I have been working now for the last like 8 to 9 years on these public education issues. So I recommend that program, because while it is entertaining, it is also very informing and very eye-opening. And that's the sort of entertainment we need to embrace in this day and age.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely. We've gone so far away from what is truly reality, because even reality TV is not reality. It's people acting as if they're involved in reality at this point. So you gin up your behavior, you act more brutish, you act more crazy, you're more antagonistic, all those things that we never saw 10 years ago. That's not our reality. That's our created false reality of today, so that you can get people involved in listening and paying attention, getting ratings on TV, and getting votes in our political system. And that's
all that
destroyed.
And all that behavior is really about trying to get the next show. Like, so the more outrageous you can act, the greater your opportunity is to have some sort of spin-off show that allows you to act even crazier. And that's sort of, we're in that crazy cycle right now. But on that note, we're going to end. Of course, we're going to, encourage you to visit northstarnews.com, our public affairs news site, for information about public policy issues affecting the Black community. But until next time, this is Walter Fields, executive editor of northstarnews.com.
And this is Rob Tarver, general counsel of North Star News. Stay awake, y'all.